Hi friends, welcome to my channel. For those of you that are new here, my name is Katelyn and I like to film eyeshadow palette, ranking and review videos, as well as the occasional other content sprinkled in. So if you like indie makeup, if you like eyeshadow palettes, if you like me, I highly recommend that you hit that subscribe button because I post 2 videos every single week. And for those of you that are not new here, my face is happy that you are seeing it again. And I am finally ranking every palette with an asterisk that I tried in this year 2023. So let me explain my asterisk really fast. So if I start to feel overwhelmed by my makeup, I declutter in that minute. I don't film it. Sometimes I'll film it for TikTok, but typically I'm not like sitting here waiting for the end of the year to declutter stuff. Like if I don't want stuff in my house, it's gotta go. Like I want it out. So I've decluttered, unfortunately, a lot of the palettes that I tested this year. So I will give you a rundown of that list. Know that they probably would fall into our first category, which for those of you that are new here, I typically do my rankings by explaining 4 different categories that I have. So my first category is always like, meh, probably gonna declutter it at some point, or I think I wanna declutter it type of thing. Like if it left my collection, I would not care. So that's where all of these palettes would fall. They were already decluttered, so they would be at the bottom of the list before the palettes that we are going to talk about in that category. But anyways, I will mention those. Also, with this holiday season, I realized that there was one palette that I still wanted to use, but I'm going to use it tomorrow, but I'm not going to have time to film tomorrow, and then after that, it's like Christmas time. You know, like I am with family, friends, not friends really, but family. That's it. Sorry to my friends, but we don't hang out during Christmas. But anyways, I'm going to be busy. So I just needed to film this. So I'm going to give an honorable mention to a palette that I bought this year, but have not tried yet. And it's the Doodles by the Bunny and Gourmand Girls collab. This is the Silent Night palette. You are going to see a video where I do test this palette out. And I will share with you where I would have put it in the rankings once I've had a chance to try it. But I have not had a chance to try it yet. I definitely have swatched it, and it's swatched really nice. I can tell because I like my fingerprints are in here. But anyways, it's swatched really pretty, and I am going to do like an all neutral look with this, and I'm so excited for that. But anyways, you'll see that video. It's going to be a makeup diaries video, so you'll see the look, and then I'll let you know in that video where I would have put that. But all of that being said, the total number of palettes that I tried this year is 98, and really 100 if you count the 2 defective palettes that I bought and tried from Unearthly, and really 101 if you count a build your own palette that I got full of singles. So that's where we were at. I think last year I ranked 100 something, like it was pretty close to that number, and I was like, next year I'm doing way less, like this is too much makeup, blah blah blah. Yeah, well, here we are. I am going to next year try less, and I'm dedicated to having less makeup. I have so many eyeshadow palettes that I love that I do not have time to use because all I do is try new stuff, and I don't want to do that anymore. I'm tired of it. I like my stuff that I have in my collection. I don't need everything, so I'm gonna try really hard to be better next year. But anyways, that was other housekeeping tips. If I have a code with a brand, I will just put that code up on the screen. And I will try and list everything that we discuss down below. I'll list everything that I show. I don't think I'm going to list all of the palettes that I don't have anymore, because we're just going to do like a rapid fire, list those out. And then there won't be links because I'm going to run out of characters. So I'll just like list the palette name so that you can search it. But yeah, if I have codes, those will be up on the screen. If I was gifted a palette, I'm going to try and list that in the description box down below next to the palette name. It will say gifted. I will try and mention it as I go as well. I was only gifted like a few palettes, so it shouldn't be too annoying to hear me say that when I have those. But anyways, okay. I think I got everything out of the way. So let's go ahead and get into category number 1, which is palettes that I feel meh about. Honestly, I could have created a 5th category and told you like palettes that I absolutely hated, because that's some of what I decluttered. But we'll be nice and we'll just say meh. So first up, the Viseart Fleurette palettes. They had the Bisou, Amore, and Core palettes. I did not like the quality on those. I don't know what it was. It didn't feel like the standard Viseart quality to me. The shimmers were more lackluster. I just didn't, like the mattes worked fine. I don't know, there was just like something about them that I just like did not like. And I don't know if it was because it was like an eye and a cheek palette in one and it just bugged me, but I didn't like them. I did not like them. And I even used the cheek shades, I think, as eyeshadow shades to like help create depth in the look because they were too light. It was just all bad. I used each of those once and went, I wasted my money. I don't want these. And we have the Pastel Roses, Frozen Dreams, and Gingerbread Factory palettes. These were the first two palettes that I purchased I think I purchased them at the tail end of 2022, but they were the first palettes that I got for 2023. And I liked them. The mirror was really warped and cheap and weird on them. I didn't feel like their quality was anything like different than what I already have in my collection, and the shimmer shades were like really crumbly, messy, and it just felt like I didn't need them. I don't think they were bad. Like they're not like on the level of those florets. Like I did not like those at all. But the two palettes from the Pastel Roses were like fine quality wise, but like the packaging irritated me. And then they were messy and like it just wasn't enough to overcome my issues that I had with them. And the ABH Cosmos palette, yeah, those mattes did not, like half of those mattes did not blend or work for me in a way or that I would expect any palette to perform, really. Like, I think even drugstore palettes have better quality than some of the mattes that were in that palette. I just didn't like them. The shimmers were beautiful, but I have plenty of beautiful shimmers. That wasn't enough to keep that palette around. Gourmand Girls and Cosmic Peaches Virtual palette. I got that in my Ice Cream Beauty box. That palette was fine. That was more of like a color story thing. Like, I just wasn't a huge fan of that color story, so I didn't find myself reaching for it, and it was just taking up space in my collection, so I got rid of that one. LEJ Beauty Resolution. It had glitter shades in there, and I'm not a huge fan of that. And then it was a neutral palette with duochromes, and I just felt like I already had that. So again, similar to the virtual one, just wasn't reaching for it, so got rid of that one. The Adept Cosmetics La Cienega palette. Yeah, that one just wasn't speaking to me, really. Like, we're at the stage where it's like, didn't really reach for it, didn't want to use it, so I got rid of it. And that's actually the case with the rest of these, so I'm just going to list the names off so that I'm not just continuing to repeat myself. But we have Gloss Gods Gal on Mars, Indie Beat Cosmetics Platinum Hits 3. I was gifted that palette in PR, and I felt a little bit bad about decluttering it, but I just didn't need an all shimmer palette of that size. Gloss Gods Color of Rain, Ace Beauté Begonia and Flora palettes, Gloss Gods Gal on the Moon, Be Perfect Manifest a Dream Big, and Melt Cosmetics Dark Matter. I know I decluttered a Melt Cosmetics palette, but I just didn't find that I needed it. And to me, the Melt Cosmetics like long rectangular pans, like that's Melt Cosmetics that I collect. If it's the circle pan, like that doesn't feel like a collector's item to me. Like, you can go. If I'm not going to reach for you, you can go. So that's what I did. And then obviously, as you heard me list through those, a lot of those palettes, or not a lot, but quite a few of those palettes didn't launch in 2023. I just tried them in 2023. So I'm ranking anything that I tried. It didn't necessarily have to come out this year. Okay, now we're moving on to palettes that I can actually show you while I'm speaking. So these are the palettes that are currently still in my collection that I feel very meh about and am debating decluttering when I do film my collection video with like maybe a tiny bit of decluttering in it, because I have way too many eyeshadow palettes. But let's get started, and I don't know what number we're going to be on. I was messaging somebody on Instagram and I said, oh, I'm going to actually do the numbers for the ranking this year, even though people like that I do the sections or whatever. And then yeah, now I'm not doing that. So whoever I was talking to on Instagram, I'm sorry, I lied to you. We're going to just go in sections because I have no idea what number we're at, given all of the things I decluttered. I feel like we should be at, let me take the decluttered ones off my list. Hold on. We should be at about 80. So yeah, let's just let me just take away and sit in the fact that I tried about 101 palettes, already decluttered the 2 defective ones, took our list down from 98 to 80. Basically, already we're at 20 palettes that I just should not have bought. So as I go through the rest of this list, we're going to probably increase that a little bit more. And that's why I'm going to buy less makeup next year. Okay, anyways, first up, we have a controversial opinion. As I've watched everybody else's ranking videos, I might be the only one in this boat, but we have the Chucky and Glamlite Crazy in Love palette. I don't like this palette. It is, I think part of it is my skin tone. All of these shades are so dark that on me, they look essentially the same. Like, okay, Play Pals and I Like to Be Hugged. No difference between these two on me. He's Back is a matte with shimmer in it, and it's a black matte with red shimmer in it, and then Free Hugs is just a black matte. On the eye, look exactly the same. What else? The like red tone is like fine, but Scarier Than Ever isn't quite light enough to be a transition on me. And Good Guys, this gray over here, also not light enough to be a transition on me. When I tried to sheer them out to blend them out more softly, things would get patchy and look gross. And there's a single light shimmer in here, which is silver. So unless every single look you want to have a silver in the inner corner or just like a dark smoky look overall or a silver on the lid, like there's not a ton of variety. So I get in theory that this is like an anti-Valentine's Day palette since they launched it around Valentine's Day. So it's supposed to be like the opposite of a Valentine's color story. And that's what made me want it. One, I love horror movies, so excited that they did a Chucky collab. But two, I thought it was cool to do like an anti-Valentine's Day palette because Valentine's Day is my least favorite holiday. But anyways, yeah, everything was in the works for me to like this, and I just didn't. So that's my feelings on that. Okay, next up is a palette that I was gifted in PR from Indie Beat Cosmetics. This is the Goblin King palette. This is based on the Labyrinth movie, and this one, it's not, like the mattes worked pretty good, I would say. They were solid. I don't have any issues with them. The shimmers were a little bit lackluster for me personally. I felt like they could be shinier, sparklier. They just weren't my favorite. And I just found that this is a color story that I'm not reaching for a ton. Definitely am able to get complete looks with this palette for myself compared to the Chucky palette. So it is better that way. Indie Beat Cosmetics is a very small indie brand. So I know that, you know, with the super small indie brands, there's some things that like you're paying more for because they are so tiny. But yeah, I wasn't like a huge fan of like the packaging. It just doesn't feel, it's like a decent quality cardboard, but I just feel like I have better packaging in my collection. And so it just is not my overall favorite. But I thought it was cool. I really like the Labyrinth movie, so I was really excited to see them do a collab, or not a collab, but because they're not collabing with them, but like to do something IP inspired. I thought that was really fun. And it's especially cool because Indie Beat Cosmetics does a lot of their stuff is like music themed. And so to have it be like the Labyrinth movie, I just felt like that fit as the movie that they would do for an IP. But anyways, that one is just, yeah, it's just not, it's more of like a color story and shimmer issue than anything else. Next up is the Be Perfect Cosmetics Gravity palette. There's nothing wrong with this palette. The mattes work nice, the shimmers work nice. It's not even a bad color story. I just found that I used it one, possibly two times, and then never thought about it again. So it's a little bit boring. I have other stuff, like stuff that I like the formula a little bit better, like my Natasha Denona I Need a Nude, Huda Beauty, Pretty Grunge. Those formulas I like more, and so I don't know that like I really need this one anymore. So that's sort of like a hindsight ranking is like now compared to the rest of my collection, like I could probably part ways with this one and not feel too upset about it. Next up is going to be a super controversial pick. Very controversial. And I'm sorry in advance, but this is my personal preference. And if you love this palette, I love that for you. This is not like an attack on you at all. If you like it, I'm happy for you. This is the Glamlite and Ghostface collab palette. This is the Ghostface Lives palette. I thought this palette was just okay. Like, better, far and away better than the Chucky Crazy in Love palette. But I was like, okay. When this launched, I skipped it upon first launch because I knew the Natasha Denona Xenon palette was coming. And I was like, I don't need 2 Grayscale palettes, right? Like, I barely need 1 Grayscale palette. I actually don't need anything. But in my mind, what did I mentally feel like I needed? And that was the one that I felt like I really wanted out of the 2. So I skipped this. But then they came out with Friday the 13th. And I was like, ooh, I want that one. And if I'm going to have Friday the 13th and Chucky, I might as well have this one. Well, then I used this one, and it was exactly, I used the shades that were more brown, thinking like, okay, if I can get like a brown look with this, maybe I'll be okay. It pulled so gray, which I know that's what the intent of this palette is. I understand it's supposed to be like a gray palette, but I was hoping that if it had maybe a little bit more variety than the Natasha Denona Xenon, I'd still like it. But yeah, it was just okay. And the shimmer that I used was Vengeful Spirit. I didn't love it. It was not my favorite shimmer that I've ever tried, especially from Glamlite. So yeah, now I'm disappointed, and I feel like I should have listened to myself and my instincts, not picked this one up. And then I also just shouldn't have gotten the Chucky one. So anyways, you will be seeing Friday the 13th a little ways up in this ranking because I do actually feel differently about that palette. Luckily, the whole horror collection for Glamlite was not a bust for me. Next up will probably be another controversial pick. I'm just here to create controversy. This is the Cosmic Beauty Delicious Delights palette, and my purple shade broke, but I repressed it. That was when it shipped to me. There's nothing like inherently wrong with this palette. I just don't know like what looks to do with it. And I think the pastel, like the neon-y pastel shades are fun, but like I just don't find myself reaching for this one. So there wasn't any quality issues. I actually think the quality on this is pretty solid. So if you like this color story and have ideas for it, I think you'd like this palette. I just find that I am not that person, and it's not for me. So that is why it's in this category of like, I could probably take or leave it. Next up is another regret of purchase. This is the P.Louise Droplet of Magic palette. So this palette and the other one, the Hocus Pocus, when they launched, I was like, oh shoot, do I want to try P.Louise? I've never tried the brand before. So I was going to get them, but then I was like, that packaging is so bulky. You have to lock and unlock and whatever and do all of that to get at the palette. Like, that's just gonna bug me. I don't need it. I don't want it. Whatever. But then I saw everybody talking about it on TikTok because they got it in their like budget box or whatever. And I thought, okay, like maybe I do want it. And then the 2 palettes went on like a bundle deal for right after Halloween, and they were super cheap. And I said, sold, and I bought them. I did not need them, and the things that I thought would irritate me about them do. And I should have just listened to myself. But here's the first side of this palette, and then here is the second side. Anyways, yeah, it is bulky. Opening, like locking, unlocking to get in and out of the palette is super annoying. I think the mattes and the shimmers both perform nicely. Like, it's not a quality issue on this one either, but my issues of being irritated with the packaging is not enough to the positives of these palettes are not enough to overcome my issues with the packaging. I find them to be bulky and annoying, and I just like don't even want to deal with them anymore because I'm sort of over it. Using them is not convenient, and they could have been edited down to be like either one giant palette, or they could have edited both of these down to be like significantly smaller and not so bulky and big. And I get that they look like a book, but I was hoping if I bought them, they could go here, but they're too tall for that shelf right there. So There we go. I kind of already spoiled it, but the next one up is the other one, the Hocus Pocus palette. I put this one slightly higher because I actually like this color story a little bit better, which is funny because the Droplet of Magic was the one I really wanted. I thought that was going to be the color story for me, but no, upon using it, I find this color story much more inspiring. So this is the first part of the palette, and then here is the second part. But yeah, I just don't know why I picked these up. I think I was in like a buying frenzy and I should have skipped those. So anyways, I'm more disappointed in myself than the palettes. Okay, last three, I feel meh about these, but I don't necessarily regret purchasing them or trying them out. I think the last three of this category are all nice. It's mostly that I don't think I'm going to reach for them a ton. So I just want to clarify that because they're slightly different than like the more tangible issues I had with some of these other ones. But anyways, next up we have the BellaBeauteBar Poison Garden 2. I just never know what to do with this color story. And there's a few shimmers in here that are not the like really fun BellaBeauteBar shimmer formula, which I personally prefer. Like Water Hemlock, Mountain Laurel, and Foxglove are all the really pretty formula, I would say, from BellaBeauteBar, but the others are just like, are not. So it's just not my favorite. I'm torn on if I want to declutter this one or not. So I have it in this category, but it's in like the top 3 of this category because like part of me is like, I kind of want to keep it. But I also kind of want to be like, no. Anyways, okay, next up, the Glaminatrix Cosmetic Sugar and Spice. I wanted this palette so freaking bad. I wanted it so bad. I saw all the looks that my friends did when they got this palette in PR. I thought every single look was stunning, amazing, beautiful. I was like, I need this. I've never wanted Glaminatrix so bad in my life. I'm in my neutral era. This will be perfect. So I bought it, and I've used it a few times, and there's nothing wrong with it. The mattes are nice. All of the shimmers perform really nicely in this palette. I don't know. I just don't feel inclined to reach for it. I don't feel like I know what to do with this color story. I think it's okay. It's not my favorite. If I want really special sparkly stuff, I do have singles, or I have some other palettes that I like better. These sparkly shades are a little bit messier than I typically like, so it just doesn't speak to me. So that's why that one is there. Last up is another palette that I was gifted in PR. And any palette that I'm gifted in PR, I don't have obligations to post. I don't accept PR that forces me to post, but I did just want to call that out. But anyways, this is the Mirage palette from Alter Ego. Quality on this one, really nice. This is really solid quality. If you saw my video, or in case you missed it, I did compare the this palette to the Huda Beauty Empowered palette, which this is a dupe of, and pretty similar quality-wise, with a significant price difference. There was slight quality differences, but not anything extreme. So I think the quality of this, especially for the price, is really nice, and I think this is a fun color story. The reason that I personally humbly have it in this spot is because I have the Huda Beauty Empowered palette, and while there are very slight nuances, and I prefer that one more, so I see myself reaching for that more than I see myself reaching for this. I don't know if I plan on decluttering this one at the end of the year, mainly because I think it's nice to have a Alter Ego palette for reference. I think the brand's really cool. Part of me wants to kind of pick up some of the Natasha Denona palettes that I don't have that Alter Ego has dupes of, just so I could have palettes from them that like I could actually see myself using, but I don't know, torn on that. But anyways, those are the 10 palettes that I feel meh about, plus the 18 that we talked about that I already decluttered. Okay, anyways, we will move on to the next category, which are palettes that I like, but maybe have some minor critiques of. So if I can count, I believe we have 16 palettes in this next category, which means a bulk of the palettes that we will be ranking today are going to be in the really like or holy grail status category. and I think most of them will be in the really light category. But anyways, so let's get started. So first up, and just to clarify this category, these are all palettes that I like and have no intention of decluttering anytime soon. I like them, I enjoy them. Maybe over time, I don't know if I'll reach for them, so, you know, I might declutter them down, you know, be more inclined to declutter them down the road, but that's not what is entering my mind right now. What's entering my mind right now is when I look at the palette, do I go, yeah, I like that? Or do I go, oh, I really like that one? Or am I like, oh my gosh, I love that one. I'm obsessed with it. Like, that's kind of where these three categories go. So anyways, first up, we have the Viseart Petit 4 Sakura Lotus palette. And I don't know if it's petit or petit. Do you hear the difference between how I'm pronouncing that? I've been corrected both ways. So I'm just going to say Petit 4. Okay. Anyways, this is a Sakura Lotus. There was 3 of these quads. I don't use or reach for quads, so ask me why I keep buying the ones from Viseart, and I don't have a good answer for you. But I just am obsessed with these like tiny little quads. I think they're so cute. This one I liked. I thought the matte color story was really nice. This purple shimmer shade down here I have in other Viseart palettes, and I think it's executed better in other Viseart palettes. So this one disappointed me just like a tiny bit for that reason, but I was able to get a really pretty look with this palette that I did enjoy. Do we count quads as palettes? Just asking for a friend. Okay, next up we have the Odin's Eye and Makeup Just for Fun Flora Story collab. This is what the inside of the palette looks like. It is a gorgeous, softer, more muted green and purple color story with some neutrals in there. When I tried to blend the purple, I experienced a little bit of patchiness, and then I wasn't sure what to do with this shade Lush. So for a, you know, 10-pan palette, I was just kind of like, I don't know what to do with one of the shades, but I do think when I've done like, I've either done like a green monochromatic look or a purple monochromatic look. I'm not great at like intermixing on this particular color story, so that's why it's in just the light category. The shade Dawn is really beautiful, I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, I think, you know, if the mattes had performed maybe a little bit better, and if I knew what to do with that color story more, you'd see it in the really light category, because I do really like the shimmer quality that Odin's Eye has. But yeah, that's why that one is there. Next up, we have the Viseart Petite Shimmers. Yes, Petite Shimmers Koi. And this is what this palette looks like. I feel like Viseart shimmers have a little bit more oomph to them, this one normally, than this palette does. But some of the shades in here are really gorgeous. Like this shade down here, I don't know what this shade name is. I think it's Yamabuki, if I can read that correctly on the back of the palette. That one's really pretty. It's pretty. I think when I had initially gotten and tried this palette, I put it in my meh category because I was like, it's all shimmers and they're not that special. Now that I've discovered playing with the Viseart all shimmer palettes by working the shimmers into the crease as like one and done looks, I value this much more. So it is in the light category, but I do feel like I have other shimmers from Viseart that perform slightly better. Next up is the Glamlite and Scooby Doo. This is the part 2 of their collab. I decluttered the ones from last year because I didn't like those. I just think I need to like just not with Glamlite for a little bit. But anyways, this is a Scooby Doo palette. I like this palette. I thought the shimmers were fine. The mattes were fine. It just, there's something about it that just has me not really reaching for it as much as I would have thought I would, because I love Scooby-Doo. I do think they nailed like the Scooby-Doo color story on this particular one, right? You got like a Scooby Row, a Shaggy Row, Daphne, Velma, Fred. Like, I just feel like you've got, you know, a lot to it. So I do enjoy it. It's just, I don't know. There's just something about it that I just like don't reach for it. So like my overall feelings on it are just sort of like, yeah, I like that one. You know, like it, sure, it's fine. So I don't have anything to pinpoint that, but this is based off of vibes, okay? So next up we have the Unearthly Cosmetics Devour palette. This palette, it has some gorgeous shades in there. These 3 shimmers like down here, beautiful, stunning. I wish this matte Devour right here was like a little bit lighter so there was more variety between it and Carnivore. And then I feel like this would have been in the really like or love category. But like that just right there makes it harder for me to figure out what to do with this palette. So that's why it's in this category. Next up, we have the BellaBeauteBar Star-Crossed Lovers palette. This palette does have similar issues to the Poison Garden 2 palette that I talked about earlier, in that there's some of these shimmers that aren't quite like what I'm used to quality-wise from BellaBeauteBar. But listen, I love me a purple color story, and these shimmers I feel like perform a little bit, like the ones, even if they're not like the standard that I'm used to from BellaBeauteBar, they perform slightly better than the Poison Garden 2 one. I just feel like those shimmers are more hard pressed, softer looking. Like I just like the appearance of these more. But I absolutely love this palette. I think this is great. This is a really good like neutral-ish palette for me because it is on the purple side, but like still could be like toned down a little bit. Next up, we have the Unearthly Spaced Out palette. This was from their small summer mystery box. I thought this was cute. I've said this before, anything less than 10 pans, I'm sort of like, what am I supposed to do with that? So I don't love smaller color stories, so I think that's what's impacting this, but I gotta say, the packaging, adorable, love it. The shades in here, all like love all of them. I think this palette benefits if I combine it with other palettes, especially like I love the shade Shroom, but like as its own cohesive color story, I'm not quite getting that. But I do think it's really good matte and shimmer quality. I think it's adorable, so I like it. It's just, I like it. That's it, the end. Next up is the Melt Cosmetics Electrip palette. I think there was a lot of complaints about the performance of the mattes in this palette. People felt like the shimmers finally performed better because Melt usually struggles there, but the mattes didn't perform well. I don't know that I had like significant issues with the mattes when I've reached for it, but every look I've done with this palette has looked the same. No matter how like different I think I'm making it, I end up doing the same look because the only shade light enough in the crease is for me is the shade Bang. And so I either have to go like red or brown in the crease. And then because I don't want a monochromatic look, I'm either doing green or blue on the lid, and it just all kind of starts to look similar. So for me, there's not quite enough variety in the palette, but I do really enjoy this one. Next up is the Natasha Denona Xenon palette. And I think the quality of this palette is really nice. I think the shimmers perform well. I think the mattes perform well. I think the cream to powder, or the cream to powder formula she has in here performs well as well. I really like it. I think the silver shades are nice. I think the like gray shades that lean a little bit more of like a slate gray, so there's kind of like a blue undertone to them, I think those are really pretty. I think Snowbow is a really pretty shade. It's just 15 shades of gray, which is to be expected. When you look at this palette, you're getting a gray palette, right? Like that is what you're getting. But I do feel personally like I got the variety like in my looks from like different applications, like doing a smoky eye, doing a like my normal eyeshadow shape, doing like a really soft look with just flurry and skift on the lid. Like I think I forgot what I was saying because I stopped to take a call from my doctor's office because they were calling me with my gestational diabetes results, which I don't have, so yay. But anyways, I think I was just saying that I like this palette. This palette could like, I debated putting this in the really light category, but when I compared it to other palettes that I really like, I was like, this is a little bit one note. Then my phone alarm went off and cut me off. Okay, anyways, I think you can get variety based on like application, but I don't think the overall color story is inherently what word am I looking for? Inherently, I don't know. My brain does not work. I don't know what word I'm looking for, but you don't have multiple options. So it's not inherently like what for like variety? I don't know. We're going to move on. Okay, next up is, I think the rest of these palettes in this category, I debated if they could go in the really light category. So essentially from the Xenon palette on, it's a step in between like and really like. like, I more than just like it, but I'm not quite really liking it. So the first up, we have the Nomad Cosmetics Royal Europe palette. I was gifted this palette in PR by Nomad, which was super sweet of them. There is a laser cut design on the palette. I keep mine in the box because I'm nervous about the laser cut like lifting up. But yeah, so pretty. I think that's such a cool packaging design. Here is the inside of the palette, and I think the multi-chromes in this palette are gorgeous for the, especially just in general, but then the cost of this palette factored in for 5 multi-chromes, it's a steal. I like the matte color story. I just wish like this shade was a tiny bit lighter and that there was more difference between these two shades. And I think I would feel more like pleased with the palette at that point. And even maybe if one of these 3 could have been lighter, like of these 2, they're very similar. So maybe this one lighter, this one lighter. This one looks light in the pan, but on my eye, it is not light. It's too dark for me. And then same with these 2, like more variety in them. But when I combine this palette with pastel palettes, it is a slam dunk, knock it out of the park, absolutely obsessed, in love with it. And I'm looking because there's a car parked in front of my house. I'm like, who are you and what do you want? Next up, we have the Melt Cosmetics and Nightmare Before Christmas collab. This is the Halloween Town palette. I do like this palette, almost really like it. I don't know what to do with this orange for the color story. That sort of throws me off whenever I've used this palette. I'm like, so where do I go with this? I really liked the look I created with this, looks, I've done 2. Really like the looks that I've created with this palette. And then I think these shimmers are good. Melt did better shimmers in another palette that they launched this year, but I do like these shimmers. I think they're better than some of their older palettes. And I do think this is a fun color story, and I really do want to play with this again. I thought it was a good time. Next up is the Adept Cosmetics Arrow Inspired palette. This one might just be because like I reviewed this early on in the year and haven't reached for it in a while. So then I was like, do I more than like this palette? I was like, I feel like I like it, but I don't remember. I haven't used it in a while. And it's a little bit, it smells like really chemically. But anyways, obviously Adept has amazing shimmers. I do remember having an issue with like the matte color story on this, like wanting just like a little bit more from the matte color story. But when I paired this palette with mattes from other palettes that I really liked, I really enjoyed this. I think it was good. Next up is Ensely Rain Cosmetics Strawberry Moon palette. This is what the inside of this palette looks like. The shimmers are gorgeous. Ensely Rain always knocks it out of the park with their formulas. I feel like the shimmers are gorgeous. The mattes work really nicely. I actually do really like the matte color story on this. My issue is that the shimmer color story up here especially, they're all very similar. Like these, kind of like these, well, not that one, ignore that one, but these 2 in the middle here, and then this one at the end, they're all super, super similar. So, I don't know. I just feel like, what do I do with that? I did create a look that I really, really loved with this palette, and then some of the other looks I did with this palette I liked a lot. So I do like the palette. It's just, I don't know, there's something about it that I'm like, I just feel like it's missing like a little something. Next up is the Ensely Rain Cosmetics Harvest Moon palette, and I do like the quality on this palette as well. Like I said, Ensely Rain always kills it with their shimmers and their mattes. I think they do an amazing job. With this palette, my issue is the color story. I feel like it's all very dark. It's mid-tone to deep. There's not a ton of light shades. There's absolutely nothing from like an inner corner lighter. Like, I just like more contrast in my palettes, and I don't think I'm getting that with this one. I do think this palette would pair really nicely with, I mean, if you wanted like brights, this palette, or they also launched the Flower Moon this year that leans a little bit more on the lighter side. I think they combine really nicely. I also think they're launching that new Cold Moon palette, which looks like it leans like very much on the light cool tone side. So I think between all of their like moon themed palettes, you could probably get like a lot of beautiful looks mixing and matching those palettes, and that might have been their vision. But yeah, for me personally, like this all dark palette is just, I mean, you guys have heard me talk about it. If it's too dark, it's just not going to be a favorite for me. Next up is the Gourmand Girl and Doodles by the Bunny Nightshade palette. I actually have this palette mostly on my lids. I have this shade, this shade, this shade, and this shade. This is the inner corner shade, but obviously I have the greens. And then, I mixed a little bit of this shade in to get this green a little bit deeper. And then I used one of the haunted shades as well. But anyways, when I saw this palette, I thought purple and green, sign me up. I've never used Gourmand Girls. I've heard amazing things. Oh, that's not true. I had used the virtual palette, but I didn't count that because that came in a subscription box. But I was like, sign me up. I want to try this brand. I want to try these palettes that everybody's obsessed with. And I can see the quality, like, and why people love the quality of Gourmand Girls. I think they have a really nice formula. For me, this one, it just feels very like I'm inclined to do a green look, do a purple look, or do like a dark smoky look. I struggle to figure out how to mix, match, and combine the color stories. Obviously, I put purple on the inner corner today, so we mixed it up a little bit, but it just doesn't quite feel as versatile of a palette for me and how my brain works when I'm looking at it. Last up for this category, we have the BellaBeauteBar Sun and Sea palette, the Sun and the Sea palette. I call this the Land and Sea palette like all the time. I don't know if it's just because I'm a big steak and lobster girl, but I cannot tell you the number of times I've called this the Land and Sea. But anyways, here's the inside of the palette. I was devastated when I was putting these palettes like in their piles. This palette I discovered the shade broke, so I just repressed it. It's still drying a little bit, so I don't know that I did a great job repressing it. That might be a temporary fix. But anyways, I really like the shimmers in this palette. I wish there was more variety in this matte color story. I think that would have put this into like, I don't know, probably a holy grail favorite, because the shimmers in this color story are really nice. I've actually had to remind myself a couple of times, like by going back into looks, because I've like thought to myself, like, do I need this palette? Do I want to declutter this palette at the end of the year? Like, is this doing anything for me? I go back and look at the looks I did and I'm like, dang, those were nice. Like, I liked every single one of those a lot. And it could very easily be like a go-to like neutral palette for me, just to like grab a neutral in the crease and put a neutral on the lid and have it still look like really fun and special. I just wish there was more. I don't even care if they kept all of these neutral, but give me like darker and lighter neutral so that I can create more of a blend, more of a gradient, or just make them a little bit more different. These two blues at the bottom, again, like more, I don't know if I hate the blues mattes. I can't remember. I don't think I hated them that much. I don't know if my dark one will work now that I broke it, but I don't recall having issues with the blue mattes. I think it was really just like the similarities of the neutrals. So I do really enjoy this one. But like I said, any of these like more recent ones I was talking about, like they could also maybe have made it into the bottom of the really light category. But when I compare some of the palettes in there, I'm like, oh, I really, really like those. So yeah, anyways. That's where we're at. I'm gonna go charge my phone while I put together the next pile of palettes for you. So you'll see me in 0.1 seconds. Okay, so if my lighting changed, it's because the sun went down. But anyways, we have 35 palettes in the really light category. Again, that hinges upon my ability to count. But we have 35 palettes in this next category, and then after that, it's Holy Grails. So within the really light category, it's kind of like really like / love. Like some of these palettes I like really, really like, and some of them I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm in love with these. But I don't know that I'm quite ready to say Holy Grail favorite just yet. So I will explain that as we move along. But first up, for this category, I have the Viseart Violette Vespertine Étendue. The quality on this is stunning. It is a gorgeous purple mauve neutral color story. It's very, very pretty. Like this top row is like for me is like the perfect like easy all matte everyday crease. Like this is just, I felt like this palette was almost made for me. If you made these like shimmers like a little bit more sparkly and like had some colorful pops, perfect. But they did that in the Violette palette. So this palette and the Violette palette combined, I really want to do a look with. Let me know if you'd like to see a video where we combine the like Cashmere and Cashmere Charmeuse palette with the Violette and the Violette Vespertine. Maybe it won't be on here. Maybe it's something I could do on TikTok. Anyways, let me know if you'd be curious to see that, and I'll decide where I want to put that. But anyways, next up, we have the Unearthly Cosmetics Get Groovy palette. This was from the large summer mystery box. It is almost like a rainbow color story. You don't have like a true red, but we all know I don't like red eyeshadow. So for me, it works. I think this is really fun, especially in the summer. It's bright, it's colorful, super sparkly shimmers. I really enjoy this one. From here on out, I really enjoy everything. Like there might be like a few little things that I give you just as some insight, but honestly, I really like all of these palettes. That's why they're in the really like category. Next up, we have the Cashmere Charmeuse palette. You know we weren't going to be too far behind on that one. So this is what the inside of the palette looks like. I just feel like this color story is a little bit more interesting. Yes, the other one's perfect for me, but this one's a little bit more interesting. The shimmer, some of the shimmer shades are a little bit shinier, and so they just add a little bit more intrigue for me. So I like this one a tiny bit better. That being said, could both of these palettes maybe work their way into Holy Grail status? Possibly, but I've only used each of the palettes once, and I did not allow myself to put anything that I've only used one time into Holy Grail territory. I already felt bad enough putting it up here, but anyways, here we go. Next up is the Viseart Coyish Étendue palette. So this is the other all shimmer palette that Viseart did. I felt like I was getting the like what I typically get from a Viseart duochrome in these duochromes. They are stunning. This is the kind of shade I was mentioning on the Sakura Lotus palette. Like this shade performs better than that one. And they're pretty much the same, but this palette is stunning. I love adding these shades in with other looks or doing an all shimmer look with this palette. That's become like a go-to for me. That's what really launched this into the really light category. I feel like I'm entering like a neutral, more subtle era as I talk with like bright green eyeshadow, but I feel like I'm kind of going that route, and having the Viseart palettes to be able to do like softer looks that are maybe like more traditionally mature. Personally, I think you can wear whatever you want to, but there's certain settings that I like work in that I feel like I have to take the like mainstream societal influence and, you know, factor that in. If you work in corporate America, you feel me, right? Anyways, next up we have the Alchemy palette. This is a collab between Jelly Wink Cosmetics and Makeup and Tattoo. I don't know when this launched, but I got it in a Snarls box, and I am obsessed with this packaging. Obsessed. I saw this palette, like Snarls box is it's a mystery box that you can buy, and they take down information on what kind of makeup you like, and you can, you know, get different things. But I was watching her, I think it was her TikToks, Marie at Snarls Box, and this palette was like sitting in the background on like an inventory thing, or like where she showed something that she had it, or maybe it was in somebody else's box. So I put in my notes, I was like, if you have any others of these, I want that palette specifically. But anyways, this is the palette. These three shimmers down here, not my favorite. These shimmers over here are really nice. They do crease pretty significantly on me, so you know, they're that really creamy formula. So if you like that, you'll really like those three shimmers. But I love this matte color story. I think it's so fun, and this is a palette that I love to pair with just special shimmer shades or the Viseart shimmers or any of my all shimmer palettes. I just really, really like this. And yes, the theming got me because I love the, you know, Universal monsters type of like old school horror movies or classic horror movies. I think so. I mentioned it in a video one time, but somebody referred to it as like romantic horror. Like love it. Okay. Moving along, we have the Viseart Petit Four Rosea Lotus Quad. This one is boring. She's boring, she's basic, but she looks so good on the eyes. So freaking lovely. Like this could totally be a palette, like a palette quad. That's why I need you all to weigh in. Is this a palette Could we call this a palette? Or is it just a quad? Anyways, totally perfect for travel. Like, this is just a timeless look. Oh my gosh, I just loved the way this performed on the lids. The shimmers looked nice. The mattes were great color for my complexion. Like, I just really liked that one a lot. Next up is the Odin's Eye and Lauren May Beauty, the Sea Talk palette. I initially was like, I don't know what to do. Like, there's not really a ton to do with this like color story. But then I just was more into like putting like neutrals in the crease and like a shimmer on the lid. And if you like that style, this is a good palette for that. Also, Electric Kelp Alone, that like yellow satin in the inner corner, it's so good. I can't tell you, probably like 4 times I did just that. Like, I didn't use any of the rest of this palette. I just used this shade in the inner corner, and I kept doing it. So I really love it. I love the shimmer shades in here. Do I wish this was slightly bigger so we could have added some like blue mattes and maybe like a darker cool toned matte and a lighter warm toned matte? Yes, but am I also okay like putting this higher even though it needs a little bit extra? Yeah, I am, because I really enjoy the shades that are in there. Next up, we have the Simply Posh Cosmetics Berry Icy palette. I was oh, wait a second. Oh my gosh. Okay, make that 36 palettes for this category. I just realized there was a Simply Posh palette that I was like, wait a minute, it's not in the ranking. I did not rank that, so I squeezed it in. We haven't gotten to where I would have ranked it yet. So anyways, this palette was gifted to me in PR, or was this one? This one might not have been. I got added to Simply Posh's PR list this year, but I don't recall when. So this one may or may not have been. I'm sorry, I don't remember. If it was not, this was the last palette I purchased from them before they added me to their PR list. But anywho, this palette is absolutely stunning. I really enjoy the shimmers. I enjoy the mattes. You have this like pinky warm tone color story and this cool blue color story. I don't typically love blue eyeshadow, but I feel like the tones of these blues I don't totally mind, so it still is like a really like, and I like the like berry theme. I thought it was fun, so I enjoyed that one, and I like the layout of their palettes. I like the way their cardboard packaging feels. Like, overall, I just like the vibe of the brand. Next up is the Too Faced Italian Spritz palette. I know, who am I? Why is this up here? But this surprised me. Like, I was surprised at how good this was. It smells delicious, and it was really fun for me to play with and use, and I had a great time with it. And I think it's a really good palette. One, particularly for a mainstream brand, but 2, it's just a good palette in general, and you have like some cooler shimmers to like make it fun, but mostly it's like bright poppy neutrals for the summertime. And I don't know, there's just something about this one that I feel like they did a really good job on this, and I think Too Faced, like, stick to these tin palettes, and like whatever magic you create for these, like, do it every time. Like, these are like some of their tin palettes start to get a little bit redundant, but the what was it, that original pumpkin spice one, I think I still have that one in like my memory box, but I don't use it anymore. But like that one and this one, I just feel like they're so good. But yeah, anyways, I'll just stop talking about it, but I really like that one. And I think part of the reason it's so high is because it really surprised me. Like, I don't think I expected to like it as much as I did, but I really like that one. Okay, next up is the Shroud Cosmetics Peaches and Dreams. I absolutely love and adore the shimmers in this palette, particularly Succulent. Like, I love these shimmers. I think the mattes performed well. I don't know that I vibe with the matte or overall color story for a 10-pan palette. It sort of feels all over the place, but I really, really like the shimmers. So I feel like when I look at the palette overall, I really like it. But these shimmers are like some of my favorite in my collection, but that's why that palette is situated right here. Also, the peaches on the packaging, it's adorable. Next up is the Blend Bunny Cosmetics Lure palette. This is what the inside of the palette looks like. Okay. This is the Blend Bunny Cosmetics Lure palette. I dropped it and punched my finger into one of the shades. This palette is really pretty. Really pretty, really fun. I didn't love this blue column, so I don't know. I didn't love it. And then I feel like the teals and greens, like, they're different, but to have like those two rows in the same thing, I just don't feel like I get as much variety from this palette as I do other Blend Bunny palettes. And I think like the expectation of what I get from that brand, like, made this fall, like, it fell a little bit lower than that, but like compared to other palettes, this is really solid. So I don't know if that makes sense. I do feel like my overall like expectations definitely play a role, because I think when I think back on palettes, I go, was I disappointed when you know what I mean? Like when you're going off of feelings and you're like, what do I feel about this palette? You're like, yeah, I liked it. But like if you were just like disappointed in it, it makes you feel slightly less on that. But anyways, I did really like the Lure palette. I think when it came out, I was like really, really enjoying it. And I think I even at one point said that I was like, I can't remember if I thought it was going to be #1 at the end of the year, but I felt like this is going to be a top palette. But man, 2023 launched some bangers, so it is down here, but it's still good. I do really like it. It's just not, the color story is not quite holy grail status for me. Okay, so next up we have the Isom Cosmetics, the Artistry palette. This is the #4 Elevate Pigment palette. This is the colorful one. I haven't reached for this one very often, so I feel like I really like, similar to the Viseart palettes that I was talking about, the all shimmer, especially the Koyish A-Town Dew. It's perfect for like fluffing a shade into the, like all over the lid, into the crease, having it be one and done. I haven't played around with this row as much as I would have liked. So I think I need to play with this palette a little bit more to get a full feel of it. But what I've done so far, I've really enjoyed, and it's been super easy, super quick looks that take me like 2 seconds, and I'm just using the shimmers and like calling it a day, and it's really nice. I do enjoy it. Next up we have the Ellie Star Brittany Huffman BellaBeauteBar Best Mattes palette. This palette is gigantic. I have not rearranged mine yet because I'm forcing myself to use every single shade at least once, like in the way that the color story was like put together, and then I'm gonna rearrange it. And I think I'll like this a lot more when it's rearranged. Right now it feels really overwhelming. But I think this is one of my most used palettes of the year. I think I want to say it's like tied for third, like, because there's quite a few palettes that I used the same number of times. But anyways, I think it's fun, and I could create so many different color stories with it and do like, you know, just some cool things with it. But it's just, I think the way it's laid out right now. So I know they made it magnetic intentionally so you could mix and match and do different things. I just haven't played with that aspect of it yet because I'm forcing myself. It's like a rule that I've imposed upon myself, but I'm going to stick to it. I think I only have like 4 shades left that I haven't tried yet. And I think once I do those 4, we'll be moving and grooving. Also, I was just thinking that like these 2 palettes would probably pair really nicely together. Anyways. Next up is the Nomad Cosmetics Oka Bango Safari palette. This palette is really nice. I really like the shimmers in it. I know some people said they got hard pan. It looks like I have hard pan on this shade, but I don't. So I don't know. Like when I look at the top of it, it looks like maybe it got some hard pan, but every time I swatch it, it doesn't have hard pan. So I'm not sure what happened. But anyways, I love the tones of the neutrals in here. I love it mixed with the greens. I think this is such a fun palette. I like the cheetah print out, like exterior on it. I think this is a really good one, and I had a really good time playing with it. Next up, don't laugh at me, it's the Laura Geller and Wheel of Fortune palette. I bought this on a whim, like truly on a whim. I was having a bad day, wanted to make myself feel better. Teresa is Dead was talking about this palette on her not like makeup nonsense bingo, no makeup, whatever. And she was like, I kind of want that. And I was like, you know what? I kind of do too. And let me tell you, I am glad I got this. This is a solid, solid palette. I really like the performance of both the mattes and the shimmers. And this is a really good like work palette for me. Like I enjoy this one. My one complaint is that the outer cardboard is kind of like sharp. And sharp's not a great word, but it just feels unfinished on the very like outer like corners and things. So I feel like they could have, I don't know, wrapped it a little bit different to make it, I'm sure that's because they have these like cutouts in here. But anyways, that was my one thought on that, but I really enjoyed that one quite a bit. Next up is the Fool Fantasy palette. This is the collab between Laura Lee and Manny MUA's brand, Lunar Beauty. Laura's brand, Laura Lee Los Angeles, obviously. This is a really gorgeous neutral palette with some color to it, but like color that's still neutral. And I think it makes sense for the two of them because they're both such neutral people that I'm like, yeah, you know, but I think this is gorgeous. The tones in here are really pretty. I don't know if this one has surpassed, oh, son of a, I just realized I tried Nude Prism this year too, and I forgot to include it in this ranking. Okay, well, I was gonna say, this hasn't I don't think this has quite surpassed Nude Prism yet. Let me grab Nude Prism. You're gonna see that one later, spoiler, but it hasn't quite like overtaken that one because I do still feel like I need to play around with this a bit more. But I do really like this one, and I really like the tones in it. I think it's really nice. Next up is the Danessa Myricks Beauty Lightwork Volume 5. And I think if you're somebody who shops exclusively at Sephora or Ulta and you don't buy indie, this palette like could be number one. Like this isn't I think the formulas in here are awesome. I think the performance of every shade was great. These shades down here, these cushion chromes, they look lackluster, but they're similar to the Viseart and the Esum shimmers where you can just kind of fluff them onto your lid and into your crease and they create like a really nice easy one and done look. I think my issue with this one, and it comes down to what I was talking about earlier, where like if you feel disappointed, you know, it can kind of taint your overall feelings on the palette. I loved Lightwork Volume 4 so much. I would still rate that as possibly one of my favorite palettes in my collection. And this just didn't quite live up to that for me. I liked the water activated liners. I liked the pressed flakes. I know that those were not popular with everybody, so I think this palette is more like widely popular, but to me I liked having more variety in the formulas, so that's why this one is here. Next up we have the Glamlite and Friday the 13th Camp Crystal Lake palette. This one might have shot up mainly because it surprised me because I didn't like Ghostface and I didn't like Chucky, and so I went into this one fully expecting to dislike it. Like I was like, it's just gonna be dark just like the other one. I'm not gonna have, like, I'm just gonna hate it and I'm just gonna have wasted all my money. So when I went in with Death Curse and Unlucky Day was very, very dark on me, but I was like, okay, I'm gonna try and blend it out with the translucent powder. I'm not gonna just assume just because the Chucky one didn't do it that this one won't. This blended out so nicely with like, I think I just even used a brush. I don't even think I used translucent powder, but it blended out so nicely. You have the lighter shimmer options in here. It's really pretty. I like this a lot. And it gives like sort of like this like murky lake tone to the colors, which I think is perfect. So I really like this one. If you were debating on the horror collections and you weren't sure which ones to get, I say get this one. I think it's the best. It has the most variety. It's the most different. Do you need like these two reds, one that has glitter in it and one that doesn't? No, they could have made that a little bit different, but you know, at the same time, compared to the other ones, this one like really shocked me. I did not pick up the Nightmare on Elm Street or Freddy because at that point I had ordered this one and Ghostface and they hadn't even shipped yet. So I was like, no, we're not doing that. I cannot allow myself to spend more money with a brand when my last order hasn't even shipped yet. So moving along, we have the Lunar Beauty Siren Sunset palette, and this is the inside of this palette. And this palette is so freaking pretty. It is gorgeous. Again, you got a lot of neutrals, but I think they're really gorgeous neutrals. The shimmers in here, like some of the duochrome shimmers, are really, really pretty, really nice. Really had a great time playing with this and definitely want to get some more use out of it. I think there's a lot of like really pretty looks that could come out of this palette. Next up is the Gourmand Girls and Doodles by the Bunny, the Haunted palette. This one I just feel like I have a little bit more variety than Nightshade. I love the shimmers, especially this one down here, which is Unearthly and Apparition. Oh my gosh, those are stunning. I do wish the 2 green mattes and the 2 yellow mattes were like a little bit more different, or maybe different shades, so there was a tiny bit more variety in the matte color story. But honestly, overall, I really enjoy this one, and I think there's still quite an opportunity to get quite a bit of variety in the looks that you do with it. This next group is still within the really light category, but like these are the ones that I would say I love. Like they're between really like and holy grail status. They're just not quite holy grail yet. This is the Citrus Punch palette from Simply Posh. I did receive this one in PR. Again, people had some issues with hard pan or like the shimmers being hard pressed in this one. I really liked the shimmers in this. I really liked the overall performance of this palette. My one qualm with the palette and why it's not a holy grail favorite is that your deepest shade is this purple, which works for, I think, like these shades that you can blend into this purple. But this green shade, I just wish I had like one more really dark matte. However, can I combine it with a black if I want to go really deep? Yes. Is this supposed to be a bright, punchy summer color story? Yes. So would it have made sense in the palette? Probably not. But that's just the one thing that I'm like, it's not quite holy grail favorite, but man, if I want like a bright look, this is definitely one of the palettes that jumps out in my mind. It's like a Skittles palette. It's like super pretty. I really, really liked this one. I thought it was really nice. Next up is the Unearthly Cosmetics Surrender palette. This came in their Valentine's Day mystery box. I love this one. There's a multi-chrome in here. Which one is it? I want to say it's Seductive. I think it's the shade up here. Super gorgeous. I thought the shimmers performed really nice. They're not quite on the level of like sparkliness that you're seeing in the newest Unearthly palettes, but it's still really solid. And it's a really pretty color story for like a neutral color story. You got some pinks in there. You have the pop of red, but I thought it was really good for Valentine's Day. Okay, next up we have the Petit Four Water Lotus palette. Or quad, whatever. I adore this. Like, I really love the tones of the shimmers and the mattes in this palette. I think they are stunning. I think they are unique to my collection. I could be wrong with that, but I'm allowed to have my thoughts. So this one, far and away, my favorite quad I have ever tried. It was so beautiful. These shades work together so freaking prettily. Prettily? Gorgeous? I don't know. Next up is the Lavender Skies Remixed palette from Gloss Gods. I have some oil seepage on these, so these shades are really creamy, but this shade down here, Dreamscape, is one of the most beautiful shimmer shades I have in my collection. Like, hands down, it's stunning. And typically when palettes are shades are this, shadows are this creamy, they crease on my lid. I didn't really notice that much creasing with this one. I can't remember with Pink Clouds, but with Dreamscape, I don't recall a ton of creasing, but I like this color story. I think it's fun that it's basically purple monochromatic with this yellow and this red. And initially I was like, what are those doing in there? Like, what are you supposed to do with that? But then I created a look with them and it like gave this perfect sunset appearance. And I was like, that's why those are in there. Next up is the Flower Moon palette by Ensely Rain. The shimmers in this palette, oh gosh, they are so beautiful. Like, seriously, they're so freaking pretty. The only reason this is not a Holy Grail favorite, because I almost put it there. I almost did it despite this, but I talked myself out of it. But anyways, the only reason it's not is because these two mattes down here are similar, and then these two shimmers right here are similar, and then these two shimmers are similar. I don't think all 4 shimmers are similar to each other, but I think we could have dropped one of the shimmers, dropped one of the shimmers, dropped one of those mattes, and added a little bit to this color story. And they could have all been matte shades, and it would have been fine. But overall, I really do like the palette. I just feel like that there's just like that one tiny thing that it's like not quite Holy Grail, but man, that is a gorgeous palette. I really do like it. Next up is the Melt Cosmetics collab with Nightmare Before Christmas. This is the Christmas Town palette. I loved the shimmers in this palette. They're more of that like iridescent topper sparkly shimmer. I feel like we haven't seen that from Melt yet, and I really liked it. I really like the matte color story here. I think this is a super fun palette. I would love to do a look combining this with the Halloween Town. I think they could be really good friends for sure, but I think this is fun. And I love that for the collab they did like the different asymmetrical packaging, but it still feels like Melt. Versus like on the Beetlejuice collab, they did the like square pans and like plastic packaging. Like, to me, I still have those because I love Beetlejuice, but that feels more like a Melt collab to me versus like just any brand collabing with the IP. Next up, we have the Wicked Widow Beauty Graveyard Smash palette. Do you see who's on that cover? Yeah, you already know. I love this. So I typically struggle with any color story that's under 10 shades, just because I don't know, I like to do too much blending with my mattes for it to like be limited. But on this palette, I was like, oh, what am I gonna do? I don't know how to mix and match these, but then I saw the cover and I was like, well, I'm gonna buy it. Anyways, these shades blend into each other way, way better than I was expecting. Like the green works with the purple, this like yellowy green works with this orange, works with the purple. Like they all work together, even though you would expect them not to from like a color theory perspective. And I really like it. I think it's a really good one. Next up is Unearthly's Fall Magic. This is the remastered version that they launched this year. These are sparkly shimmers. Like sparkly. I love and adore this palette and this color story. I love a good pink and green moment, and this gives it to me, and I just think these shades are so freaking pretty. I really think they did a good job. I didn't have the original Fall Magic, so I don't know how different it is, but I really, really like this one. Next up is the Adept Cosmetics Element 115. Listen, I've only used this once, okay? So take with this what you will. But man, this is freaking pretty. I've used it and swatched it. I've used it once and swatched it once. I'm a little bit scared about these stripy shades, so I'm going to try these out. You'll see it in a look soon. But the rest of this that I did try out, I used these two shades. I actually combined it with a neutral palette, so I haven't tested the mattes either. So I'm sorry, but I freaking love this color story. I love anything space themed. I thought these shimmers that I put on the lid, they performed so well. Everything when I swatched it felt like the normal Adept formula, so I still felt like comfortable putting it here. But I recognize that you might have to take what I just said with a grain of salt. I will continue to share my thoughts. I rank every eyeshadow palette I use each month, like the following month. So you'll see every palette I used in December. You'll see a ranking in January where I can give more updated thoughts as I've continued to use things. But anyways, I really like that one so far. Next up is the Huda Beauty Pretty Grunge palette. I really, really liked the tones of the mattes in this palette. I thought it was really fun. It's a gorgeous neutral color story. The shade Rebel is a little bit of a nuisance to work with. It's pretty chunky, glitter's getting everywhere, but man, does it look pretty on the lid. Like this is really fun. I like that a lot. Keeping with the grunge theme, next up we have Blend Bunny Cosmetics Sugar and Grunge. Although I don't know how grungy this one actually is, but I really felt like I didn't vibe with this color story for the longest time, but I kept forcing myself to use it. And then recently I did a look with like the teals and the purple shimmer, and I was obsessed with that look. And so now I feel like, okay, I think I get it now. I get this color story. Something clicked in my brain, and I think this is so fun. I love the like pastel-y shades up here. I would argue that this is not, even like the deep shades down here, I don't think they're really grungy. So I don't know that you're getting grunge in this, but the like sugary part, it's fun. Next up is the BellaBeauteBar Recently De-Influenced palette. I love the shimmers in this palette. I've waxed on poetically about them in multiple videos. I think this palette is gorgeous and stunning and all of the positive things. I think it's really, really pretty. I don't feel like I've used it enough to, and kind of wanted to continue to reach for it enough to put it quite into Holy Grail status, but this is close. Like it's possible that as I use it more that it will attain that, but I really like these shimmers, so I don't know. But yeah, anyways. this was the right spot for it, okay? I love it. I don't know if it's a holy grail. Next up is the Simply Posh Cosmetics Aurora Lights palette. This was gifted to me in PR as well. This palette I just did a 2 looks video with, and it blew my mind. It is so freaking pretty. I absolutely love it. It is gorgeous. Similar to the last one, it's like, I just don't know that I've used it enough yet to like firmly solidify that it's truly a holy grail, but it's really pretty and I had a lot of fun with it, and I do want to reach for this one again soon. Next up is the BellaBeauteBar Basic Witch palette. I adore this color story. I adore the mattes in here. I adore the shimmers in here. I love everything about this. And like, yeah, all of these pretty much from here on out in this category could maybe have been holy grail favorites. I don't know if I didn't use them enough. There was just something holding me back. I don't know what it is, but this palette is so stunning. I did a look just with like one time. So I've had a lot of days lately where I'm like, I don't really have time to get ready, but I just want something. So I did Grimoire and Incantation, and I just like threw them on the lid and like called it a day. So good. And so to me, and maybe I should have put this one as, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, maybe this should have been holy grail status, because like you can get a quick, easy 2 and done look. You could probably combine like the pink shimmer, the pink matte, whatever, but you also can get like a more intricate, more complicated, more like, you know, fun look with it too. I don't know, but I really like this one. Yeah, I don't know. It just wasn't quite holy grail. Next up, I also debated on putting in the holy grail status or not, but I couldn't do it. But this is the Adept Cosmetics Sumerian Sunset palette. Listen, I'm a giant Star Trek fan, so I will admit a bias in this because this is based on a drink that's featured in like some of the Star Trek shows. But anyways, the only reason that I could not, in good conscience, put this as a holy grail favorite is because there was 2 shades that I had issues with creasing, and also this is not like a color story I typically tend towards, but in my mind I was like, if I want like a reddish toned look or like a warm kind of folly look, like I could totally see that this being my go-to palette for that. Like, so could it be a holy grail favorite? Yes, but then I was also like, but there's 2 out of 15 shades that I'm like creased on me a lot, and I probably wouldn't reach for those again. So then I'm like, I don't know. So anyways, I debated on that. Last one that I teeter-tottered on if it should be a holy grail favorite or if it should be in the really likes category is the Lethal Cosmetics Wildflower palette. I love the shimmers in this palette. I think this is such a fun color story. I brought this on vacation with me and kept reaching for it and was kind of surprised because I was like, usually I turn into like a neutral girly on vacation, but I wanted to continue my review of this palette, and I was like, dang, like I really like this. And it was so fun. I love how the different shades like pair with each other, and it's just gorgeous. So I really, really liked that one as well. So that is the end of the really likes. Let me get everything together for the loves. Or not loves, the holy grail favorites. All the things I just showed you were loves, but anyways, holy grail favorites coming in hot. The final category is 18 total palettes that I would consider new holy grail favorites for me. So here we go. First up, this is actually a Death and Candy Custom Creations palette that I bought from them to put these singles in, but this is the Make Your Own Magic palette from BellaBeauteBar, and I think they had 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. So I want to say there was 9 shades in that, and so there's like 3 of these shades in here that technically weren't a part of that palette. But since the Make Your Own Magic palette was sold as a palette, I felt like still ranking this, even though they were technically like a palette bundle of singles. But it's basically like, I think it's like these 9 shades here. They are stunning on the lid. They are flaky, they are messy, yes. But man, do they give a beautiful look. If I use any of the singles like from that collection on my lid and I go anywhere, people are like, what is on your eyes? Because it's gorgeous. And so I really like this. And then of course I put it in space packaging, so I like it even more now. Shockingly, because in my Aurora Lights video, I said, I think this might be my favorite Simply Posh palette of all time. However, we have leapfrogged And I think Cozy Cabin is actually my favorite Simply Posh palette. I received this one in PR. This palette has just been sitting on my vanity since I filmed my video with it, and I haven't found myself able to put it back because anytime I just want, like I said earlier, like there's a quick and easy look, like I just go down the rows or like columns in here and I can get like this whole section here is not neutral, but it's like more wearable muted colors, and I feel like I can get looks that work for work but are still like special and fun and different. And I've had an absolute like I haven't been able to put this down, so I felt like this one had to hit Holy Grail because when you have as many eyeshadow palettes as me, if I continue to reach for something, like that says something. Next up we have the Blend Bunny Cosmetics Machina palette. Yeah, if you watched my review of this palette, you'll know I had a great time playing with this. Anything that gets me like back and inspired with playing with different colors and doing different looks, like I really will always love. I do feel like the shimmery shade Cyborg, everybody says that it's like this amazing wet looking shadow, and I see so many gorgeous looks on Instagram. So I think in my review video I mentioned that it didn't look as like good on my lid as I thought it was going to, but I had tried a new eyeshadow primer. So I want to give this shade another chance because everybody else, I see the pictures and they look gorgeous. So I really want to love that shade, but I really like the color story of this palette. I like the mattes options, and yeah, it's a really fun one. Next up we have the Esom Cosmetics number one, or the Artistry palette, the number one Balance palette is what it's called. It's an all matte basic neutral palette, but I really like it and I really keep reaching for it, and I don't know what it is about this, like I don't mind not having a mirror, and I just kind of love the ability to like just hold this in my hand like this and then just do looks with it, and you get kind of like the Blend Bunny effect of like you could go just straight down in the columns and not really think about it, or you can mix and match and do different things. I've mixed and matched. I've included like purples with warm tones and gotten like a gorgeous like neutral look out of it. So I really like this one. I think their mattes perform really nicely, and I think it's a good time because I keep reaching for it. That's why it is in this category. Next up is Lunar Beauty Nude Prism. Oh my gosh, what a shock. Who knew? I have said this before, so for those of you that have watched my videos, you may already know this, but when this palette first launched, because it didn't launch in 2023, but when it first launched, I was like, I don't wear neutrals. What am I going to do with that? I don't need it. I'm going to skip it. And then everybody was like in love with this and was like, this is a gorgeous neutral palette. These colors, like the undertones, like this is stunning. And they were obsessed with it. So then I went to go buy it and it was out of stock. And it was out of stock for like 6 months. And then it finally came into stock and I bought it and I tested it out. And yes, this is a perfect neutral palette. It is gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. Anybody I know that's like getting married and wants like a palette recommendation for what to use, I'm like, this one, use this one. It is so pretty. Yeah, so that's why it is in a holy grail status, because I've been using this throughout the year and it's really nice. Next up, we have the Unearthly Cosmetics Sorceress Smoke palette. This palette is absolutely stunning. The look I did when I filmed my video testing this out, it was like the first time I used makeup after I had COVID, and I just stuck to the neutral side, but I've since played with it a bit more and utilized like the green, I think mainly the greens. I maybe have worked in a darker brown, but it was mainly the greens. But anyways, this is stunning. The sparkliness of Unearthly shadows like cannot be overstated. Like they are the most sparkly things I have ever seen. Are they kind of a pain in the rear end to get off because there's like tiny little glitter particles everywhere? Yes, I will admit that, but I don't care if I look like I swam in glitter. Like to me, that's a good time. So I really like this one. Next up is the BellaBeauteBar Pastel Garden palette. So this palette, you could obviously get a completed pastel look with it if you wanted to. I don't love pastel looks, but this is my most used palette of the year. So when I was ranking these, I didn't have this one as a holy grail favorite, and then when I had counted like how many times I used palettes and I saw this was my most used, I was like, okay, well, maybe I need to rethink this. And what I think is any of the palettes that I mentioned where I was like, oh yeah, I like this, but I need a lighter shade or blah, blah, blah. Like this has been my go-to to combine with all of my eyeshadow palettes to give myself, my fair skin, that lighter color that I needed. Or if I wanted a pastel pop in the inner corner, it performed so nicely. I decluttered almost all of my pastel palettes. I think there's really only one that I kept, which is Fairy Tale Fairies. I decluttered almost everything else because I was like, I don't need it. Like this is perfect for pastels. Like I have the pastels I want in here. So I really do like this one. The shimmers are gorgeous in here. So yeah, as far as like, even though like an all pastel look isn't my jam, and so this isn't a palette that I necessarily reach for on its own, it's a palette I've reached for a lot. So I did feel like it still warranted Holy Grail status. Next up is the Odin's Eye and Betty Jean Planet Spirit palette. Now this one is in the Holy Grail category because I don't think I have mattes that are this bright and neon and perform this well. Like these shades in this palette are so gorgeous. They look like you have highlighters on your eyes. I think they're stunning. I think it's nice if you want to just do like 2 eyeshadow looks. You can do that pretty easily with this palette. For me personally, it's similar to the Pastel Garden in that it's not necessarily a palette that I do like a completed look with just this palette, but it does get brought in whenever I want like a really bright matte. I'm like, yes, I want a bright orange. This one is it. So I do really, 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 really love this palette. So there we go. Next up is the Isom Cosmetics, the Artistry palette number 2 Intensity eyeshadow palette. So this is the all shimmer palette, but the neutral all shimmer palette, and here's what it looks like. I think this is freaking stunning, and it is so easy to create looks with this. You can pair this with the all matte palette, and you have like the 3 shimmers that match the 3 mattes in each column. You can just utilize this and blend, do what, like I said, with the colorful one, where you're just like blending the different shades into your crease, and it looks gorgeous. And I just feel like this palette is so easy to use, and it's another one where you have the, I've already closed it, but you have the satiny shades up here up at the top. These are all satin finishes. Anytime I've wanted a satin in the inner corner, I've grabbed this. Like I feel like I love a satin inner corner, so I'm like all about this one, and the shimmers are so freaking gorgeous while still looking nice on the lid. I don't know how to explain it. I love this a lot. Next up is Miss Nomad Cosmetics Ghost Town USA. Hopefully I'm getting that to flip okay for you guys. Anyways, this is the, I already said the name of the palette, but here we are. So I got this palette. It literally arrived right before I was going to Hawaii, and I was like, well, this isn't giving me Hawaii vibes, but I'm going to bring it with me anyway because I want to test it out. When I tell you I reached for this palette more than any palette on that trip, you want to know why? Because the neutrals, they're so pretty. I did one look with them the first day when I was like just trying to slap some eyeshadow on before dinner, and I was like, man, that was easy and that was stunning. And then each time we were leaving, I was like, I'm just gonna put a neutral look. Like I said earlier, I turned into a little bit of a neutral girly on vacation, and I might just be turning into one in general, as you'll see from the other palettes that I have ranked in the Holy Grail. Most of them are neutrals, or neutral adjacent. Anyways, this palette I think is gorgeous. I love the tones. There were, I want to say it was 2 shades that creased on me quite a bit. I want to say it was this one and this one, or possibly this one. It was 2 of these 3 down here that I had pretty significant creasing on after a few hours of wear, but the rest of the palette worked well, looked great. I liked the creaminess of the shimmers, and the creasing, when it did happen, it was the kind of creasing where like I could tap my finger over it and it blended back out. I tend to have creasing, so it's like that's not going to be an end all, like a make or break for me on a palette. I very rarely have palettes that don't crease on me. That's like a shock in and of itself. But yeah, this one I really enjoyed it, and I could totally see myself using this more often. Keeping with Nomad, the Verona Amore y Morte palette, or the Love and Death palette, I feel like I absolutely adored this palette. I loved the ability to have these like pinky shades combined with this like darker, more sultry side. I don't love red eyeshadow, so really that's the only shade that bugged me, because like this is like red, but it's more of like a bricky red, and then the rest are like corals and pinks. I feel like these two shades were similar, and we could have had a little bit more variety in that color story, but overall, I thought it was super fun. I know some people said they got hard pan in this palette, and let me see, there's one shade. Okay, Romeo I have to push my finger into a bit to get that to come up, but I don't feel like I had hard pan. I just think these are like more harder pressed shadows. And I know the brand offered, if you had a really hard pressed palette, they offered to send you a new one because there was like an error in the thing. So I had to build up the pink shade a little bit, but for me, I didn't take the brand up on that because I was like, I can get these shades to work how I want them to. So I'm okay, but yeah, just a fair warning on that one. But I thought it was nice that the brand, like customer service wise, I thought it was good that they offered to do that for people, so you could have like a slightly less firmly pressed shimmer palette or shimmers in your palette. But yeah, those are the only two that I recall having issues with, and those are the only two that look like they might have hard pan. But they're not hard pan. I was able to get them up. I just think they're more firmly pressed. I don't think it's like truly hard pan, at least for me. Okay, next up we have the BellaBeauteBar Smokey Glam palette. Oh, you know what I didn't mention on the BellaBeauteBar Pastel Garden? That one I was gifted NPR. I'm sorry, I didn't say that. That was a palette I was gifted NPR. Okay. Here's Smokey Glam. This one I bought myself. So this one is absolutely stunning. It's again neutral, but also like sort of colorful, but muted. I think it's gorgeous. These shimmer shades are out of this world, insane, amazing, beautiful. I love this palette. Is it large? Yes. But it's not overwhelming. Like, I still feel like I can look at it and like think of looks that I want to do, and create like cohesive looks, and I don't feel like stressed on what to pull. I think you have plenty of options for like easy, quick looks. I think you can create something like really glam. Like, I just think it's gorgeous. I think it's lovely. I really, really like this one. Okay, next up we have the Natasha Denona Yucca palette. This one is freaking stunning. The shimmer formula that she has in this palette, I think that they're the sparkling foiled shades. I don't have the box anymore, but Plantasia, I did like a neutral look with just Plantasia and Valley. Oh my god, I did it. I was like, oh my gosh, like I could just wear that every day. Like, it was so gorgeous. I love the ability to mix in some greens. I love this color story. I just think this is so pretty, and Natasha Denona really delivered on something that was like different from what she typically does, and I really liked it. I had a great time with it. On this one, I think some people said they had the issues with the cream to powder shade Fushi. I didn't have any, but I really like the cream to powder formula, so I don't tend to have issues with that, but I know it's not for everybody. Speaking of cream to powder, my next palette is the Danessa Myricks Groundwork palette. I love everything Danessa does, so I didn't even hesitate when she was launching like what's essentially an all matte color, like neutral palette. You have the cream to powders as well as the powders. I thought the cream to powders worked beautifully on the lid, and like just blending with those. Like I said, I'm a fan of a cream to powder formula. I feel like this is similar to the Natasha Denona cream to powder. This one might be a tiny bit better. It blends a little bit better. If you're not getting the depth you want, you have the powder option to go in. I think in my review video on this one, I had said that it's kind of annoying from like a face palette standpoint that the pans are so small, like it's hard to like get your brush in, but I literally just pop, like it's magnetic, so I just pop the shades out and I dip my brush into the shade outside of the palette and then I pop it back in. I have used this a ton for my face. Like I think I said in my review, I was like, I'm gonna use this on the eyes, but I don't think I see myself using it on my face. I use this, this is one of my top used palettes on the eyes. I didn't even track how many times I used it on the face. There was one week where I ran out of brow products. I used this palette to do my brows that entire week. I still went back to like brow products just because it's like easier and I prefer the method of using a pencil versus like a brush in this. But whenever I wear wigs, I can create whatever shade of brow hair I need to match the wigs. Like this, I cannot recommend enough. I love this palette. Seriously, I love it. I love it. Next up is the Melt and Bailey Sarian Fatally Yours palette. This is relatively new, but I have used it a few times and I want to keep using it. There's a particular palette, an all shimmer palette that I have that I just want to marry those two palettes and use them for like a week. I don't know if that would be an interesting video for you guys if I did this palette, and I'll mention the other palette because you're gonna see it soon. But if I just did a week of using just those two palettes together, I feel like I'm gonna love what I see with that. But I love the tones of these shades. I thought it was stunning. The performance was great. I think in my review I mentioned that I did feel like I had to bring in other things to get the palette to go as light as I would like to. Like not light, but like to create the contrast in the look. You can definitely get a crease with this. Like if you're my skin tone, you can get a crease with this, no problem. There are shades that go light enough to blend out into the crease and work fine. So it's not so much that, but for me, I like contrast in my looks, and this is very much mid-tone to deep. So I do have to pull in like other shimmers or other things that are brighter, but I don't even mind. I don't even mind because I love everything about this. I think it's so nice. I don't love the sandpapery texture. I just accidentally touched it, but I love it. Next up is the Natasha Denona I Need a Nude palette. I know. But the shimmers in this palette are so pretty. It is very light. So if you're somebody who likes darker, you know, mattes, this is maybe not for you. You really only have one deep matte. But for me, I really like this. This is such an easy palette for me to use when I'm like, don't want to think about it. And now that I'm looking at it, I'm like, maybe this is the palette I should use for my maternity shoot pictures. Why didn't I think of that sooner? I think I might have to do a look and see how I feel about that. But I really love the shimmers on this. I think this palette is gorgeous. I love the more like cooler blushy tones on it. I really like this. And yeah, it's one of my new favorites. Okay, next up is the Izamaya Beauty Industrial 2.0. This is the palette that I would like to marry to the Bailey Sarian Fatally Yours. I would like to spend a week just using these two palettes together, and I feel like amazing things could happen between these two. I really do. This palette, listen, I have never spent so much money on an eyeshadow palette in my life. I know I have palettes that retail full price for more than this. I always use gift cards on those, or wait for a sale, or have some sort of discount code. Never have I paid full price for those. This one, I did have 20% off. So I think it's $115 normally, and I got it for 20% off. So it's still pricey, but it's definitely the most out of pocket I have ever spent on an eyeshadow palette. Like the Danessa Myrix is like $129. I bought it technically at full price, but I had a gift card to Sephora. So like money out of my pocket was like $40. And so that's what I kind of consider when I buy some of these. Do you guys do girl math? For me, if I have a gift card, it's free money. That doesn't count. Towards the cost. Anyways, this palette is so like indescribable. It is so beautiful. I cannot tell you the number of times I have just slapped one of these shimmers on my lid with a bronzer in the crease and called it a day. Or the Danessa Myrix Groundwork palette, once I got that one, that replaced the bronzer. But anyways, I just cannot stop like using this or wanting to use it or adding something from this to like add a little bit of sparkle or add a little bit of razzle dazzle to a look. I just think, I don't know how to explain it. I just think it's so pretty. My favorite shade is, let me see, I don't even know. The only thing I hate is I can never figure out which shade is what. I want to say that this is Oxide, maybe? It's this one here. Right here. This shade. I know I've only swatched like 3 shadows. Like, sorry, I only swatched the occasional one, but this is so stunning. Oh my gosh, I just can't even. It's so pretty on the lid. You just get this like metallic green flip to it. To die for. I love this. Does the packaging bother me? Yes. Have I moved on? Yes, because I think the actual contents of the inside are so gorgeous that I just love everything about it. So there we go. Okay, we're down to one more palette. I know. I don't know if you were keeping count. I was not. But we're down to the last one. My number one palette that I tried in 2023 is the Ensely Rain Brittany Huffman Midwinter Dream palette. Whoa. Okay, something weird happened. I haven't looked at this palette in a minute, but do you guys see Snow Nymph? Like, can you see that? It's like the pigment, like, changed. Let me see. Oh, I think it's almost like those, you know those, like, sequin pillows? What? So it's like, you know how, like, you flip, like, you, like, push your hand and it's one color, and then you push your hand and it's another color? That's, like, what just happened on this. It was red, but now it's flipped to this, like, the more I touched it, the more it turned into this, like, gold shade. It wasn't red, I should say. It was, like, purple. That's weird. Well, okay, I do love this palette. It is number one. I obviously haven't looked at it in a second. Did it always look like that? Am I crazy? Have I lost it? I think I've lost it. Let me see. This palette is tied for third most used, so, like, I did use it a lot, but I will admit it was not my most used palette. The, like, purpliness that's coming through is the difference. It was like a gold coppery shade always. So I don't know where that purple, like, underneath is coming through. It's so weird. Okay, anyways. This palette technically launched at the end of 2022, towards the end of 2022. I missed the initial launch because I don't know how many palettes they stocked because I was, like, right on top of it. But anyways, I missed it. Oh no, that's what happened. They launched it early. They launched it like 30 minutes early, so it was sold out when I, like, logged on, like, right at the time, and then it never came into stock because they had already sold out. Anyways, so I had to do the 6 to 8 week pre-order. I was, like, salty that I missed it because I wanted this so bad. I love Brittany Huffman, but I was a little salty that I missed it because I wanted it so badly. But then when they were talking about the pre-order, I debated, and then I was like, screw it, this looks really pretty. So I bought this. This was one of the first palettes I tried this year, and man, did it blow me away. These shimmers are next level stunning, super gorgeous. I love the color story on this. Could I have done away with Hibernal Solstice? Yeah, but the rest of the palette I think is so freaking pretty. I really, really love this one. I love playing with this. I feel like I can get completed looks with this. I also feel like I can pull these shimmers in to use with other palettes that I really like. And overall, it's just my favorite of the year is what I decided. So that is it. We're finally done. I'm tired and I'm hungry, and I'm sure you are too after sitting through that. One question I have for all of you that have made it this far is, would it be fun if, for those of you that have been around, you may recall this, but I did a March Sadness series where I took 16 palettes, did palette battles with them, and then we had an ultimate winner. Now, I've since done palette battles a little bit differently because, let me tell you, doing a look on each eye with each palette, it's not conducive from, like, a time standpoint. So I am wondering if you would be interested in seeing the top 16 palettes that I ranked this year, doing, like, the palette battle the way I do it now, where I basically do a look with each palette. I'll try and post, like, a short or a TikTok or something with it, and then I do a like a bracket style challenge of my top 16. So let me know if you would want to see that, or if you want me to rank the palettes that I got in the second half of the year, and, like, a la Lady Katie 92, or that might be her Instagram name. I'll link Katie's channel down below, but she does, like, a palette battle where she, like, ranks in the first half of the year, ranks in the second half, and then sees who comes out on top the first half or the second half of the year. I can do that as well, but I'm curious. You can also are welcome. Oh my gosh, that was terrible English. You are also welcome to let me know that you want to see both. I'm open to that as well. But yeah, that's it from me. I hope you all enjoyed this, and I hope you don't judge me too harshly for my choices. I would love to hear from you. What was your favorite palette of the year? What were your top 5 favorite palettes? However many you want to list. Let me know which palettes you loved this year. I would love to hear from you in the comment section down below, and I will see you all next time. Bye!